Hello fancy managers and welcome back to another video from myself, Will, and fantasyfootballhub.co.uk. We're continuing our brand new series where we're going to be interviewing some of our contributors with amazing track records. Up next is the one, the only Adam Hopcroft. Welcome, Adam.
Cheers, Will. Thanks for the kind introduction.
Yeah, no, it's great to have you on, and because I know you've got an incredible record. It's up there. I think it goes without saying that you're one of the best managers in the game. Look at, 30. How many seasons is that? Eight,
Do you know what?
9 seasons. I've lost
Nine
track.
seasons. I'm
Nine
nine
seasons.
seasons now.
Not
Nine
once
seasons in.
outside the top 35k. Some ridiculous finishes in there as well. I think you and I were sort of struggling last season, and the difference was that I had a stinker and you absolutely smashed it. So yeah, congratulations on another good season. So let's jump into your first draft. Okay, so this is your defense. Talk us through that, why you've gone for these picks. McCarthy at the back, in between the sticks. Are you a little bit worried that they're going to sign another keeper, or are you pretty confident Southampton are going to stick with McCarthy?
Well, I'll obviously wait and see on that one. The other alternative is Ryan. But from reading articles last season, I think McCarthy's actually done a really good job at Southampton. I think he did. He's the XGC prevented at the end of the season was fairly promising. He was outstanding in that Man City game. So I think he's rightfully earned the shirt. So I'd expect to see him start as number one and continue. I think there was a couple of times where he made mistakes in the middle of the season, but he was never replaced for Gunn. So I'm hopeful he'll start. And I've got Nyland as a backup. And contrary to what I said on the pod, he's a little bit of a liability. But I think the way things are going, I was hopeful Villa would be a little bit swifter in the transfer market. It's not quite happening at the moment. So I think based on what we know at the moment, he'll be a starter. And I think Heaton's back optimistically game week 5. So I quite like that combination. The other reason, I think the Ryan... The Ryan McCarthy combination works quite nicely for the season. The only thing putting me off it is I want the flexibility and as much funds available in midfield and attack, because I think I talked to this on the pod earlier in the week. What will inevitably happen is the players that rise quickest and the players where there's the most excitement will be midfielders and attackers. So for me to start with having... if I was 0.5 off a move, I'd instantly regret having 2 4.5 million goalkeepers. So I'm prepared to make a little sacrifice in that position. So yeah, fairly set on them at the moment.
Moving on to your defence then, Vinagre, Trent and Justin. Pretty good defence. I can't really argue with any of those picks. Talk me through those and your reasoning behind them.
Well, I think Trent's a no-brainer, assuming he's fit. He'll be in my team. If he isn't fit, I'll probably just put Robertson in, or potentially Nico Williams could be an option as well. The Vinagre, I think he'll start the season because I think Nuno tends to stick with the tried and tested players. So I expect him to start, even if they do sign another fullback. Obviously, we've had the news of Doherty going to... or very likely joining your boys, so which I think is a very, very good signing for Spurs. But I think I'll just wait and see. Obviously, nearer the deadline. But I think Vinagre, Wolves' record at the back was brilliant, and I quite like Wolves' opening fixtures. So I think he's likely to be in my team, if not possibly another Wolves defender. Justin, I think. Leicester's fixtures are good, and I think Pereira's not going to be back too early in the season. So I think having those 5-6 fixtures at the start of the season will be useful. And I think there'll be some attacking threat as well. But I'd rotate him. I'd rotate both of them with one of the Leeds defenders. So I think I've got Ayling in my team at the moment, but it could be Dallas. I think Leeds could offer some really good value at the back this season, and that's why I've got a Leeds defender in as well. It's not completely set at the moment, but I think I am leaning towards having Trent three 4.5s, and if possible, a 4 million defender. And I think the best 4 million defender, a lot of people are looking at Palace. I'm not sure. I'd want more assurance that Ferguson is going to play. I think Ben Johnson for West Ham has actually played himself into the team, and I also think Fredericks has got an injury, hasn't he? So they're going to be last on my bench anyway, but I don't know, they've got tough fixtures, so I won't be relying on that fourth position. I'll have a look at the fixtures a little bit more closely before making a final draft, but it's definitely going to be Trent and 3 4.5 for exactly the same reason. I want that flexibility in attack to move quickly and bring in all of the attackers that I want.
Yeah, you're bringing in a lot of, or you're making a lot of budget available, and I guess this is partly where it's going into the midfield there. Interesting choice. A lot of people going for Salah over Mane. I spoke to you briefly before we did this video. So you said you're not set on that, but talk me through your reasoning behind going Mane over Salah.
So I think a lot of people, like you've rightly said, will point to that. People look at expected goals. People look at Salah's on penalties. But the reality, and actually, I think, but I think, as an FPL bunch, we're very, very fickle. And if you go, if you go back to mid last season, in fact, the triple captaincy, more people were looking at Mane for triple captaincy. And I think up to that point in the season, Mane was edging Salah. Probably was outperforming Salah. Having looked at it, when I watch Liverpool, I don't really see either one as completely dominant over the other. I think they're both great options, and they're both, and actually I looked at the stats for it. So the last 45 Premier League matches they've started together, Mane's got 28 goals, Salah's got 21, and that is a bit. And I think the assists were identical, and even when you looked at the expected goals, there was very, very little in it. Just that Mane had overperformed and Salah hadn't. But Mane's overperformed his expected goals for, I think, just given the chances he's getting, he doesn't shoot as much. I think it's sustainable, and I actually think they'll both score similarly. And I actually think it's really difficult to predict who will start better.
What about the argument that Milner's not going to be playing as much this season, so Salah's going to get more penalties, therefore he's going to potentially get even more points this season than he has in previous ones?
Yeah, I think penalties is probably the only thing that would make me reconsider, because just when I watch Liverpool as well, I always think Mane looks better, and I think Salah gets into positions, but there's a lot of times, particularly recently, where people say he's underperformed his XG, but I think his finishing isn't brilliant at times, and I think he's wasteful of chances. Whereas Mane, I think, looks a little bit more composed. I think the other thing with Mane, which I do like, is he's capable of taking games by the scruff of the neck and influencing them.
Interesting. Yeah, no, I do get that. I think Mane has a lot of merits. I still personally favour Salah, but I can totally see your logic there. Moving on then, before we get sort of dragged too far down that rabbit hole. Looking at the rest of your midfield, Aubameyang, Armstrong, and Ziyech. I think I said that right, or
yeah. Well, don't ask me on pronunciation.
Talk me through those picks and your reasoning behind them.
Yeah, Aubameyang's fairly self-explanatory. I think he was the one that I was looking forward to most when the game was released, purely because I expected him to be a midfielder, and he'd have got 2 points less than Salah if in a far worse team last season if he was a midfielder. So I think he stands out for those reasons. I think the first two fixtures are really good as well, and it gives me the flexibility, and I think flexibility is really important then to move him to De Bruyne if I want to. But I think I'm just impressed. I like watching Aubameyang. I mean, in the cup final, he was outstanding, and in the semi-final, so he's got the pedigree to do it against the bigger clubs. And I think Arsenal will improve. Ziyech, he's not nailed, but I want a player at that price. I think because it gives me flexibility to go up to Son, maybe get Mason Greenwood in easily. I think, given what's happened at Chelsea with everybody isolated, I believe he's involved. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I think he's involved in training, and I think it could mean that whilst the likes of Mount and Abraham have had a disrupted start to the season, he's involved, and they've got a very good fixture in Brighton to start off, and I think they've got West Brom away in the third game. So he's involved in a lot. He's on set pieces. Chelsea, I think, will score goals. I think they'll score against Liverpool as well. So I think, usually I'd wait and see, but I think he's a sort of player I like, and I think he's kindly priced. I mean, there will be an exit strategy to Havertz once that's confirmed, and or Pulisic as well. So there's plenty of players at that price where I can get out if he's not the right option. Armstrong is. I like Armstrong. I thought last season, particularly post Project Restart, he was outstanding, and I think there were a couple of games where I really enjoyed his performances. Away at Norwich, away at Man United, I thought he was a constant threat. So I think I think he's shown he's got the pedigree to get goals and assists, and it's really a choice between him, St Maximum, possibly Naby Keita as well. But so I think all three of them have got different merits. Obviously, I can scout Keita the weekend, but and St Maximum possibly could end up playing through the centre. So I'll judge it nearer the time. But I think Southampton, the way they finished last season, in fact, since the turn of the year, have been really, really impressive. And I quite fancy having at least one Southampton attacker.
Yeah, no, I can't fault either of those picks. I really like Ziyech, actually. Put him into my 9 underpriced players video, which I'll leave a link in the description if anyone wants to check that out. Armstrong, I think I probably, on balance, I've looked at that sort of price point. I like that price point, and I like your structure of the midfield. I'm edging towards St Maximin, but I can certainly see, lots of merits for Armstrong as well. They've got great opening fixtures. He seems pretty kindly priced as well. So can't really fault any of those midfield picks. Moving on to our cheeky Fantasy Football Hub plug. You can get 25% off in our pre-season discount. We've got loads of benefits there you can see up on screen. Adam, do you use Fantasy Football Hub membership? I hope you do. What's your favourite feature?
Yes, I do.
Good.
My favourite part of it, I think, other than the great articles from all the contributors, is I think on the stats, I think they take it to another level. So it makes it really easy to analyse. So one of the things that I will always look at is the home and away stats performances. And you've obviously got the expected stats and their own version of expected goals. So you can also see actual FPL points, which is really useful when break it down home and away. So it's great for analysing stats, comparing players, looking at expected points. So yeah, it's really user friendly as well.
Nice one. Good answer, mate. Right, moving on to your forward line then. Antonio, Mitrovic and Verna. Talk me through that. Some nice price points there. I like all three of those picks. Are you pretty settled on this, or you're
no, thinking it might mix up? I'm settled on one of the three, which is Verna.
Yeah.
Again, just all the points I've mentioned before on Chelsea. I think he's been training with them for a while. He'll be settled in. I liked him for every time I've watched him. I've liked him as a player, and I think the fixtures really suit him. So the first two games are Brighton and Liverpool. Liverpool tend to play quite a high line, and where he is, and Brighton do actually base, will tend to do. And I think based on that, what he is very, very good at is getting in behind players and getting in behind. I think so. He's lightning as well, so I think he'll do well.
Talk me through Antonio and Mitrovic then.
Okay, so Mitrovic, he isn't completely nailed. So there's two. I think what I like about Mitrovic is he's a talisman, and if Fulham score, he will be involved. And I think he's probably about 500,000 less than I would have expected him to be. He got 11 goals in the Premier League, so he's proved he can score in the Premier League, and a very, very poor side as well. And I think Fulham will be a little bit better than they were last time round. They'll be in a relegation scrap, but I think I think Scott Parker's done a really, really good job there. So I like him for that reason. He's not nailed because there's a couple of other players that interest me as well. I like Che Adams at Southampton. I think I was really, really impressed watching him towards the end of last season. I think, the issue with him is minutes.
Yeah.
But if he has a good pre-season and is showing the same sort of form, and I'm confident he'll start, may go for him instead. Antonio isn't set, but just for simplicity, he's got a great game week 1 fixture, probably the best. Dubravka's potentially out now as well, which makes it even better. His performances post lockdown in that number 9 role were incredible. Moyes has form for converting play. I think he did it with Antonio on Arnautovic to as well. So I think that bodes well. The concern I've got and why he's not completely nailed, and also the stats he posted were just incredible. I think he was out XG in people like Salah and Sterling. I think the concern is Haller, and if he pushes Antonio into a wide role, and I'm not 100% confident he won't do that, but I do have 2.5 million in the bank, and this is really key. So what I'm probably going to do, so it'd be Antonio game week 1 and then Antonio to Martial. Right. So I've got that 2.5 million to make, and that, Martial will almost certainly be in my game week 2 team because I just think I think he'll have a huge season next season. I think since Fernandes has come in, he's upped his game. He looks like a number 9 now. He's playing for, I think, like if you look at him and Verna, outside of obviously City and Liverpool, they're playing for the 2 best teams in the country in the number 9 position. I think he's established himself ahead of the pecking order in terms of being seen as the main men of Rashford as well. I think he looks at Bruno and Solskjaer looks at Bruno and Martial as the main 2 men now. And he just showed a really selfish, hungry side to him towards the end of last season. He was sulking when he got subbed. I love all that sort of stuff. That's what you want
for an FPL asset, don't you?
Yeah, and apparently as well in the Europa League, when they at the I thought would be the quarterfinal of the last 16. He was begging to come on when United were already well up in the tie because he could just see that there was going to opportunities to score. And I think he's got rid of, because he had a bit of an image of just like disappearing from matches literally, where we'd get leaks that he's not in the squad. And I think a lot of that is mentality. I think particularly since Fernandes has come in, you can see he's the happiest player in football. He hasn't missed a single game since Fernandes has been there. And I think for me, he's going to be United, along with Fernandes, United's main man. So if United were playing game week 1, he would be in. So it gives me the luxury, really, of having any forward up to 9 million for game week 1. I might consider Ings as a possibility as well. But I'm not. I just think for a 1 week punt, Antonio's got the ultimate fixture. So
why not? Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Just to finish off then, having actually I've got 2 questions. One is having a quick look at your bench, and 2, I'm going to ask you a little bit more about your chip strategy and potentially when you're thinking about playing your wild card. So very briefly then, just because you mentioned a couple of these players already, talk us through your bench. So you've gone for Johnson, Ayling, and Gordon there. They locked in, or you thinking that's could potentially mix that up?
It might mix it up, but my tactic here is I want the cheap, as close to the cheapest bench possible, and so I just don't see the point in spending that much. I'd rather put it in my first 11, and I think a 4.5 million defender. I think Gordon will get some game time at Everton as well, so fairly content with that. I don't want to overspend.
Yeah, no, fair enough. Makes a lot of sense. My one question about this team is you got a fair chunk of... I really like it, by the way. I think there's some brilliant picks in there. You got a fair chunk of players which I can see you might need to be transferring out potentially. Vinagre, Justin, Antonio, if you already planned that. Potentially McCarthy. Have you sort of planned to wildcard, or are you just going to sort of remain, to try and get through till game week 16 potentially, and then play a wild card, or are you? What are you thinking about your chip strategy? That's my question.
Okay, yeah, it's a good point, and I will wait till nearer the time till game week 1 before deciding on my lineup, because I think what you've mentioned about some of the defenders is completely valid, and it might be safer to go. With some other players. So I'm going to consider that, particularly for the 4.5 million defenders. But so that, like I said, there is some flexibility to make changes there. My plan at the moment is not to wildcard early. I normally wildcard early. I think I wildcarded game week 2 last year, game week 3 the year before. So game week 3 the last year. So I normally go early, but I'm going to try and leave it as long as I can. The priority for me, and I think where you get most of your points, is I'm going to be fairly aggressive at the start of the season to get the players that I want. So I do actually advocate wildcarding early, but I just think the ceiling for the wildcard could be around as close to that game week 18-19 split.
Absolutely. No, it all makes sense. And that's sort of my chip strategy as well. I'm similar to you, usually big advocate of the early wildcard, but going to be trying my best to hang on to it this season. I think we've come to the end of it. Thank you so much for being on, Adam. If your watchers enjoyed this video, please like, subscribe, comment, and all that good stuff. Where can the watchers find you, Adam?
On Twitter, Hopcroft13.
Good stuff. And you're, of course, one of the hosts on Fantasy Football Hub podcast. So please go check that out as well. Thank you so much for watching, and goodbye.